Howdy folks, couple of jobs on today, but this is going to be the first one, working on the old pig, the DRZ400E. I've been having a bit of trouble with this guy not charging correctly. Basically what's happening is on idle, it's putting out 13.6 volts to the battery, which is normal, but as soon as I rev it up, the volts drop off quite a bit. So we've got a suspected problem with the regulator rectifier in there, or with the stator. So we're going to have a go at going through and testing all those today, and see if we can work out the where the problem is. Anyway, we'll slowly rip into it. I haven't got my tripod yet, so I'm going to try and set up the camera so you can see what I'm doing, but hopefully that works out alright, and we'll see how we go today. Anyway, we'll start ripping into her and finding the bits where we need to test and going from there. Okay, so first things first, I've just unbolted the rack regulator there. We've identified where the wires are going. So this is a three-phase alternator system in the DRZ. This is the main lot of wires coming out of the alternator slash stator, which isn't the correct term, I believe. They go directly into the reg rack, and then the output lines from the reg rack is that red one and the black one return. And as far as I'm aware, they basically go to the battery. So that supplies a regulated 12 volt voltage to the battery, or 13.5 or whatever, rather than the peak volts that come out of the actual alternator, which are up around 30 to 40 volts idle and somewhere around 50 to 60 revving apparently. So we'll be testing that. So these are the plugs that we're basically going to be testing through here today. So firstly, I will try going over testing the diodes in the regulator. We're also going to clean up the back a little bit, make sure we've got a really good earth on the frame in here. This bike's pretty old and doesn't get looked after the best, as it's my daily ride. It just keeps chugging along, so good old DRZ reliability. Anyway, we'll get into doing a bit of testing and see what we can find out. So before we go too much further, I've just got my little digi multimeter here. Before I go too much further, I'm just going to test the voltage on the battery, just to see where I'm at today. It's been losing a bit of charge. So that's sitting pretty much on 12.36 volts. That's a little bit lower than it should be. So first up, we might chuck the battery charger on there just to make sure we're playing with a full battery. Battery charger is now hooked up. I think we might pull out the rec just to make it a little bit easier to test and to show you guys. So I'll just unplug that now, and we'll try and find a good bit of space to set up with the camera and see if we can go through the testing procedure for that. Okay, so we've got the reg out of the bike now. We've basically got two plugs on this. On one side we have the three leads coming from the alternator. They're all the same colour, and basically they're the three poles from the alternator coming into the reg rack, which then gets rectified to DC as the voltage coming out of the alternator itself is AC, and regulated back to 12 or just over 12 volts back to the battery along this one. So the way these work is there's a series of diodes in there. They only let the electricity through one way, and by lining up the three poles, that's how you get your 12 volt DC. So the first thing we need to do is go through and test those diodes. That's essentially just checking each of these terminals with the negative of the multimeter on the positive line here, which is the out line, essentially out of the reg rec to go to the battery, and then the negative line going back in. So I'm going to see if I can get this camera set up so that you can see what I'm doing, but it's just pretty much a simple process, putting the negative lead of the multimeter into that red line, and then using the positive on each of those, using the diode check mechanism on the multimeter. Okay, so I've got the negative lead hooked onto the red wire there, turn the multimeter on. It's saying 1 at the moment, so nothing going through there, and we'll go through and just test each of these three plugs. So that one seems to be working, number 1. That one's actually a little bit lower, interestingly enough. A little bit of resistance there maybe. Oh no, it's still within spec. And the last one. Okay, so they're all going pretty neatly. All around the same voltage. Interesting. I was really hoping it was going to be that. Okay, so this time I'm going to do basically the same test, but to check whether the diodes are actually working. They're only supposed to let power through one way. So all I've done is swap the leads over. We now have the positive lead on the positive wire here. And basically it shouldn't matter what I do here. None of these should let the power back through. And that's exactly what we're getting. So, unfortunately, going by that test, my reg-rec is working fine. That's not a good look. That means it's probably going to be the stator. Anyway, okay, so the regulator tested out all right, which is a bit of a shame. I was hoping that was going to be the problem. The next thing we're going to do is try and test the stator. So to start off with, I'm going to do a passive test, engine not running. Basically what we're going to do is check the ohm value between poles 1 and 2, 1 and 3, and 2 and 3, and measure the resistance of those. Make sure they're all about the same and within spec based on the manual. And then I'm also going to go through and test poles 1 to earth, 2 to earth, and 3 to earth, just to make sure there should be no connection to earth through the stator. If you are getting a measurement there, that means that the insulation in the stator is breaking down and shorting out that way. So I'll just go through and try and test those couple of things, and we'll see where we come back.
Okay, multimeter on ohm setting, positive in there, so from port 1 to port 2, make sure we've got a connection there, that's 0.1 ohm, that's in spec, so number 3, that's 1 ohm too, and then we'll do 2 to 3, 1 ohm as well. So now I'll just quickly check from terminal 1 to earth, yep, no connection there, from terminal 2 to earth, no connection there, and last but not least, terminal 3 to earth. No connection there. So that's all checking out good as well.
Okay, so ohms readings were good. The next thing to check is going to be the output voltage from the alternator itself. The way we do that is we set our multimeter onto AC volts. I've got mine on 200 because I believe they should be up around the 70 volt mark with a bit of revs. Essentially all we do is probe between wire 1, wire 2, wire 1, wire 3, and wire 2 to wire 3, and ensure we're getting similar voltages across all of those. They should all be very, very close to each other, both at idle and revved up. The revs should go up a little bit higher, so I have to do all that with the bike on, so it might be a bit noisy, but we'll see how we go with that. I am just waiting for the battery to be fully charged before I do that, because the bike will be just running off the battery and we don't want anything funny going on. So I'll get back when the battery's fully charged and we'll kick her over and see what we come out with. So while I was waiting for the battery to charge up, I thought I'd just come in and check the manual I've got on the computer here just to get the voltage outputs on the stator. And I went down a little bit, and these in the manual, there's a few more tests for the reg-rec to go through, just to check everything else. So I've only checked the one end here, so this has got some values for checking all the wires against each other. So I might just work through those quickly now while we're waiting for the battery to charge up, and see what kind of readings we get on those, just to definitely rule out the old reg-rec not working. So anyway, I'll slowly work through those, and hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit of it. So hard to get a good connection on these sometimes. Try that again. Okay, no, that seems to be in spec. Does seem to be a bit tricky to get a good connection in here though. That could be part of the problem. I'm going to have to play around with that a little bit more. Okay, so upon further inspection, working through the tables on all the terminals here, I am definitely getting a funny reading off this the bottom pin at the front here. It's a lot lower than the others are measuring across the various connections that you can make. and seems to be consistently lower than what is on the specs on the computer. So I think the reg rec might actually be buggered upon further examination. We will go and test the stator just to make sure and rule that out. And I'll come back and check this again a bit later. But I think we might be replacing this little guy, which is good because that's the cheaper option. So we're just going to check the voltages, the output voltages of the alternator across each of the 3 terminals. They seem to check out alright. Voltages are going up as expected. So I think the alternator in there is going to be alright. Must be the reg. Okay, so we've gone through and tested the alternator. That seems to be checking out alright with its ohms readings, grounding to earth, and output voltages. The reg rec is bringing in some funny values. Some bits are just not giving values at all where they should be. Some are in spec, but yeah, there's a whole bunch missing in there, so I'm guessing it's the reg rec that's not working. Battery's all nice and charged now. I'm going to put this back together as best I can and order a new reg. And we'll test it again when that turns up. That's going to take a few days, so it might be another conclusion video. But I think we can safely say that that's the problem part here today, and replacing that should fix my charging problem. So fingers crossed with that, and I'll let you know how it goes when I do get my replacement part. Thanks guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like my videos. Hopefully quality is going to get a bit better as I learn a bit more. And yeah. Hope I can inform you of some useful tips and tricks and how to go about troubleshooting and fixing stuff yourself. Anyway, talk soon. Bye.